Does your child constantly seek intense movement? Do they never seem to get dizzy no matter how much they spin? Do they love strong sensations and loud noises? If so, as a parent, you've probably been told, they'll outgrow it, or I think it's a behavior thing. Maybe you need to be more strict with your parenting. If that's the case, you're not alone. You see, what many parents don't realize is these aren't just quirky behaviors, they're actually signs of a sensory processing issue called hyposensitivity. Now, sensory processing issues affect 1 in 6 kids here in the US, and many parents are familiar with being oversensitive. As a result, their child avoids lights and sounds and certain touches and tastes and textures. However, on the flip side of things is something that's much less discussed called hyposensitivity. And this happens when children don't receive enough sensory input from their environment. As a result, they actively seek out intense experiences to satisfy their nervous system's needs. So, in this video, I want to share with you if you're a parent whose child struggles with constantly craving movement, or maybe they struggle with focus, or they're always seeking intense sensory experiences. If maybe you've tried traditional therapies and you're like, success was kind of limited, or maybe you've talked to your child's pediatrician and sort of been ignored. Well, if that's the case for you, this information could be life changing. Now, I want to discuss why hyposensitivity develops, why traditional approaches might not be providing the results you're looking for, and more importantly, how addressing root neurological issues through specialized care can actually help your child find balance and begin to thrive. First, I want to share with you a story of Paul. He was 8 years old when he came to see us, and mom brought him in because he had intense emotional outbursts. On the sensory side, he did avoid certain things like you would think. He avoided clothing, he avoided lotions. He didn't like to put sunscreen on, as an example. However, what gave us clue to a hyposensitivity issue was actually mom said he always would give too tight of hugs. His brain was craving all this input. Now, imagine being his mom for a moment. And yes, she was worried about these emotional outbursts because of how intense they were. And as a family of five, they affected the whole family dynamic. But also, under the surface, imagine if your child is 8 years old and they're trying to learn how to make friends, how to show bond and love and human connection. But every time they tried to hug someone, they got pushed away because that person was getting strangled and feeling uncomfortable. I feel for the little guy. Fortunately, fast forward 6 weeks of care into our office, and mom's filling out a progress eval form. And on there, she's putting, yes, his outbursts are coming way down. His emotional regulation is actually starting to come up. And best of all, in this situation, he started to give normal size hugs. His brain was starting to feel satisfied with its normal day to day input, and it didn't need to crave this extra input from the outside. So, what does this mean for your child? Well, here's the thing. To better understand sensory seeking behaviors, before I go into why they develop, I want to give you a few clues to see if your child has something called hyposensitivity. So, aside from creating too or needing too tight of hugs, other signs that we see with families that we work with in our office are kiddos that seek a lot of movement. They go on the swing set and they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. They love to spin. They love to jump off higher and higher things. They love crashing into things. They run into you and they're always like pushing against your leg. Maybe they have difficulty focusing or even like recognizing where sounds are coming from. The input isn't coming in a clear enough way that they kind of can be a little disorganized, dysregulated in the world. Other clues might be your child craves really intense flavors, or they're always like sniffing things, always touching things, or always like exploring the world. Those would be signs too that their brain is seeking more and more and more because it's not coming in a good, organized, and loud enough fashion. They might struggle with body awareness or coordination. In this boy's case, he wasn't aware of what he was doing to the other person. So, if your child is doing these things, one of the keys to understand is that it's not just a behavioral issue. They're not trying to rile the other person up by always touching them or bumping into them or being obnoxious. What they're doing is they're trying to get information their brain craves. So, why might this develop in your child? Well, what we see with sensory processing issues, whether it's hyper or hypo, like we're talking about, is often it's early stress happening for your child's nervous system. This can be as early as during pregnancy. In Paul's case that I just mentioned, his mom already had two toddlers at home, and while she was pregnant, her family was not only moving into a new house, but they were building out the new house to move into. So there was a lot of stress starting to get wired into his nervous system early on. Next, we want to always check in with families to see how did labor and delivery go? Was it smooth or was there some sort of intervention? Was there forceps, suction, C-section? Did baby get stuck partway through? In Paul's case, mom said there was actually complications from birth, not because it was too slow, but because it was too fast. And he shot out too quickly. And as a result, his body, as it was going through the birth canal, didn't have a chance to mold to each contraction. And it created extra stress on his nervous system early on. Now, if you accelerate a little bit after birth, what we see as signs of a nervous system under stress for infants might be things like difficulty nursing, being colicky or refluxy, not sleeping well, always having to be held, always having to be in a certain position. We have an infant that started a month ago in our office, and mom and dad are like, well, if we hold her head like this and her hips like this, and we put her in this position and do this and move this certain way, that allows her to feel comfortable. Any other position, she's crying and she needs to be on us. So those are signs that stress in the nervous system is starting to build at a young age. What we call this stress buildup is an imbalance between two sides of the nervous system. There is an autonomic, think of as automatic part of the nervous system that regulates whether we are revved up and stressed, like our foot's on the gas pedal, and if we are calmed down and regulated, our foot on the brake pedal. So this imbalance is something called dysautonomia. What we typically see with kids with sensory processing issues is this imbalance is off and they are stuck in this mode called fight flight. It's the sympathetic side of this autonomic nervous system. As a result, their brain is feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and it has a hard time because internally stress is happening. It has a hard time then processing the external world. So, in the case of something like hyposensitivity, think about it the last time you had a lot on your mind. And maybe you're rushing to get to an appointment on time or to get to a flight on time, or you're worried, like, all right, I got this on the stove and I got to get lunch ready over here and I got to get that kid dressed. And your brain is almost discombobulated because it's trying to process so much. Now, in that case, one of your kids comes up and like tugs on your pant leg and says, hey, mom, hey, dad, I need your help getting my socks on. And you're like, oh, I don't have time for this, right? And you kind of ignore them. So they start tugging louder or shouting louder, right? They have to put more and more input in because your brain's under stress and it's worried about all the other things. So same when it comes to hyposensitivity is if your child's brain is under stress, it needs louder and louder input to try to overcome the noise that's already there internally. As a result, what we see is a lot of families, by the time they come to see us, they've tried a lot of other traditional therapies, things like OT or behavior interventions, ABA. Maybe it's things where they're saying, all right, I'll give you this reward or I'll give you this punishment if you start to do what I hope you do, because these quirky behaviors aren't the best when we're out in public. And as a well-intentioned parent, we see a lot that are trying their best to help their child overcome these challenges. However, they often tend to hit a plateau or they don't sink in. They're not as lasting, as effective as a parent hopes for, because they don't address this underlying root neurological dysfunction. They don't address this underlying imbalance in the nervous system. So, what we do in our office then that's different is if a child that comes to see us and parents say, yep, we've tried this therapy, we're good for a bit, then we sort of hit a plateau. Or we notice like, yeah, we made momentum and then now there's been this big regression. If a kiddo is stuck in something like that, what we do in our office is first, rather than just worrying about the diagnosis or the symptoms, we want to go below the surface and start to look at how is their nervous system actually functioning. So in our office, we use what are called insight scans. It's a specialized technology that helps us measure the state of someone's nervous system to see if it's out of balance or if it's in balance. If it is out of balance, where in their nervous system is that stress coming from? If we find that there is stress stuck on in your child's nervous system, then we can put a personalized care plan together to actually help you get beyond that plateau and to start to see progress by breaking through those old stress patterns to bring balance and harmony back into your child's nervous system. As a result, as in Paul's case, we start to see a nervous system that becomes more regulated socially and emotionally, more able to not constantly be seeking external stimuli for regulation because it's balanced and regulated internally. So, if this is something that you're interested in, if you're looking to get your child to that next level, or you feel just kind of frustrated or stuck with the options that you've tried up until this point, please reach out. Check out our website. We talk more about the scans, we talk more about sensory processing. Give us a message, shoot us an email, give us a call, and we are happy to help to see if this is something that can take your child to the next level and help their sensory processing system thrive. I'll talk to you soon.